It's 6:21. Time for traffic this morning. Here's Jerry Edwards. Good morning, Jerry.
At the Woodrow Wilson Bridge this morning, looking all right so far.
You are
a little
too.
bit
It's
of
quarter
fog
after
out
6,
there.
and we've got your jazz continuing at 90.1 FM.
Queen Elizabeth's 12-day visit to America starts today.
And D.C. is ready to welcome the Queen of England, who will arrive at the...
And official Washington is ready to roll out the red carpet for the Queen of England today. She's due to arrive at Andrews Air Force Base. And
15 years after her last state visit to the U.S., the Queen began this tour at the White House with the 9th president of her reign. Welcomed by President Bush, saluted with gunfire. The sights and sounds of America's war of independence from Britain were on display. But today, said the president, in the sands and seas of the Persian Gulf lies the proof of ties never closer, of an alliance perhaps never stronger.
Years from now, men will speak of American and British heroism in the Gulf, as they do today of our cooperation in 2 world wars and 40 years of peacetime alliance.
It was mid-morning, and as the temperature climbed to 92 degrees, concentration lapsed, and the great podium incident unfolded. George Bush, 6'2", made no allowance for a queen somewhat smaller, and to the thousands watching, she became the hat of state. It didn't stop her teasing them.
It is 15 years since our last visit to Washington, when, with a gallant disregard for history, we shared wholeheartedly in the celebrations of the 200th anniversary of the founding of this great nation.
The slip-up behind them, they went on to a string of ceremonial duties, and then the president showed the Queen the pit he'd built near the Oval Office for throwing horseshoes. It's a pastime of this sporting president. He gave a demonstration. The Queen gave him plenty of room.
Very nice.
He missed. Soon, a more somber mood at Arlington National Cemetery, where at the tomb of the unknown soldier, the American dead of 2 world wars, of Korea, Vietnam, and the Gulf, were remembered. Camera shutters greeted their evening arrival at the White House. The Queen, the guest of honor. For General Norman Schwarzkopf, a slight change of uniform.
Mr. President.
There were toasts to friendship and alliance, and another reminder from the president of the rebels who led America's revolution.
And I often wonder if I'd be standing here today if it weren't for a horse fancier named Paul Revere.
Day 1, drawn to a close by Jesse Norman. Day 2 began in northeast Washington, where drugs and murders are common, but where one youth club run by the police gives youngsters a haven. Their martial arts were a big hit. Nearby, a warm welcome. The district's children had rehearsed for days. Don't push, don't touch, don't get too excited. Alice Fraser was excited. She'd also been to a rehearsal on what was proper when the Queen came to visit. She forgot everything and did what she'd been hoping to do for weeks. After the hug, she insisted on introducing her whole family and telling her visitor that she already lived with a queen, Laverne Queen, her granddaughter. No one quite knew how to take her. Try to leave her and she wouldn't have it. She needed photos for the family. In the end, sadly, no, the Queen couldn't stay for the fried chicken and iced tea Alice had made. Never mind, it had all been worth it.
I can sit down and talk to my grandchildren, you know, and tell them I'll make the Queen.
Lunch came at a celebration of British film and television. But after Alice, perhaps everything was an anticlimax. And it was hot. Very hot. Outside, at the garden party in the grounds of the British Embassy, it wasn't just hot, it was crowded and hot.
Could you step back? I'm sorry, but we have to ask you to move.
1,800 people at one of the social events of Washington's year.
All right, look us up. Back up again now.
Most of them straining for just one glimpse.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you are aware, the Orioles are tonight playing host to some very, very special guests who have come a long, long way to see their first baseball game.
It's Wednesday night, and former university baseball team captain George Bush takes his guests to see the Baltimore Orioles. In fact, to meet them in their dugout.
Right now, there she is.
But how to greet the Queen? When one of the legends of baseball, Babe Ruth, met the Queen's father, King George VI, he kept it simple and said, "Hiya, King."
Number 12, Mike Devereaux.
There was ball-by-ball advice from the president. From her position in the box, the Queen could also see protesters in the stands.
I doubt not of his temperance.
Very well.
The next morning, the entertainment changed to the Folger Shakespeare Theatre and King Lear's reconciliation with his daughter Cordelia.
I fear I am not in my perfect mind. Methinks I should know you. And all the skill I have remembers not these garments, nor I know not where I did lodge. Last night, do not laugh at me, for as I am a man, I think this lady to be my child, Cordelia.
And so I am. I am.
Then the turn of the children. At school, for weeks, they'd been rehearsing the taming of the shrew.
He's been saying, okay, I want you for my wife, and she's like, right.
The key moment, every child actor's nightmare, the kiss.
Here, Tim, don't bend until she comes to you.
Time and again, they tried to get closer.
Okay, but you guys are gonna have to be close for it to work, otherwise we go.
Time and again, they just couldn't. But with a royal audience, you've just got to roll your sleeves up and get on with it. On Capitol Hill, they were preparing for one of the highlights of the visit, the Queen's address to a joint session of Congress, the first by any British monarch.
Mr. Speaker, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh.
Both houses of Congress are controlled by the Democratic Party. She began playing to the gallery by reminding members of her arrival at the Republican-controlled White House, when protocol failed and the podium kept her hidden.
I do hope you can see me today from where you are.
In a speech of thanks for a century of alliance, the Queen pointed to the common bedrock of Britain and the US, democracy.
Some people believe that power grows from the barrel of a gun. So it can, but history shows that it never grows well, nor for very long. Force in the end is sterile.
She praised the president and America's troops for helping reverse the invasion of Kuwait. But there was a sting to this speech.
Unfortunately, experience shows that great enterprises seldom end with a tidy and satisfactory flourish.
Iraqi Kurds and Shiites are still suffering, she said. Britain and the US are doing their best to achieve lasting peace.
If we succeed, our military success will have achieved its true objective.
Her address ended with a pledge of friendship.
You will find us worthy partners, and we are proud to have you as our friends. May God bless America.
A torrential downpour marked the Queen's arrival in Miami. In the grounds of an ornate mansion, Florida's finest were drenched. Undeterred, the children had been practicing their curtsy for hours. Their big moment came and was gone in the sweep of a wet entourage. Other techniques fared no better. Technique is something the Tornado Marching Band is still working on, but at least they had the weather. The students, 1/3 of them born in Cuba, couldn't stay still, and they wanted the Queen to do the same.
Everybody dance now.
The notes were sharper that night as the guests arrived at the quayside in Miami for a dinner on board the Royal Yacht Britannia. 2 former presidents joined the Queen and 2 former First Ladies, cruising among the Florida Keys. The Keys are a collection of small islands off Florida, hundreds in all, Key Largo and Key West the most famous. Centuries ago, other Britons came here, planting the pineapple, tamarind and lime trees that once made these islands rich. Today, tourism is their lifeline, and it was to one tiny island 68 miles up the coast that the royal party came to see Fort Jefferson. At every stop on the tour, a gift, this seashell to be added to a collection on the royal yacht. The Queen and Prince Philip were certainly dressed for a tropical weekend. Their escorts, the US Rangers, who now man this national monument. Fort Jefferson was built in the last century as a key coastal defense, but its 140 guns never saw battle. After the American Civil War, it became a prison, housing 4 of the men who conspired to murder President Lincoln. Today, it's the site not of troops or prisoners, but of tourists and wildlife. The rest of the weekend was spent away from the cameras, with time to meander among the islands, picnic on the beach, and swim in the warm seas. Calm before the storm. Florida is also home to the warplanes and the troops of US Central Command. From MacDill Air Force Base, the American military directs the movements of its soldiers across 3 continents and 18 countries, including the Middle East. From here, F-16 warplanes took off for the Gulf and for Iraq, and with them went a man who would soon become a household name, the man the Queen had come to see. General H. Norman Schwarzkopf was waiting to become America's 13th honorary knight, though there wasn't much room left on his uniform for any more honors.
Are you nervous?
No.
Not at all?
No.
But Stormin' Norman had been hoping for a more clement welcome.
I would like to introduce you myself.
First stop, the war room that was the hub of Operations Desert Shield and Desert Storm.
This really is, in fact, where most of the initial planning and the deployment of our forces took place.
the Queen was shown a film never released to the public of some of the combat of the Gulf War. It was afterwards in private that she made the general a Knight Commander of the Order of the Bath. There was no sword, the general didn't kneel. He emerged with the honour he'd been handed and a citation that read, "For outstanding leadership of Allied coalition forces." The star and badge doesn't mean he can call himself Sir, but everyone here calls him that anyway. A flypast of F-16s was followed by a tour of the base. The new Knight's first act of chivalry to steady the Queen's umbrella. Not quite the weather for an open top, but the two of them seemed oblivious to the rain. As the general bade farewell to the Queen, the media was anxious to hear his thoughts, one admirer to find out who he was.
Did we see you on TV?
Yeah, every now and then. All I really thought about was the magnificent British forces that were under my command and what great supporters they were. From the day they walked in the door, Sir Peter de la Ville walked in the door, the absolute total 100% cooperation, and they're true friends. They're very, very dear friends of ours.
Texas, the Lone Star State, home of the cowboy and home deep in its heart of the Alamo. It's a symbol of Texan independence, for it was here that 189 men held their ground for a dozen days against a Mexican army of 4,000. Among them the famous frontiersmen Davy Crockett and Jim Bowie. There were 12 Englishmen, 12 Irishmen, 4 Scotsmen and a Welshman. It was here that the Queen began her days in Texas. Among the exhibits, Davy Crockett's rifle. Like the other guns that held the Alamo, it fell silent on the 13th day when all 189 men were killed. The battle cry, "Remember the Alamo," inspired Texans to win their independence 6 weeks later. A new country, recognized by the Queen's great-great-grandmother, Queen Victoria. Today's Texans rather like the Queen.
She looked right at me. She looked right at me, right straight at me, and I curtsied.
I want to go home with her.
She's a senior citizen like we are, and I hope she's holding up well.
She just epitomizes so much in elegance. She's a grand lady.
Texans may be part of North America, but the culture of the southern continent is in their blood. And in San Antonio, in the music and on the river, you can feel it. Texas today is battling with another frontier, space. At NASA's Mission Control in Houston, the Queen saw the nerve center of 30 years of space exploration. Mementos of early flights, lunar landings and space shuttles abound. The Queen was guided by one of the new generation of astronauts, an Englishman, Michael Full from Cambridge.
We are honored to welcome you to the Johnson Space Center, Your Majesty and Your Royal Highness. Thank you for visiting.
Houston builds well-mannered robots. Their goodbyes friendly but a little stiff. It was in Houston, America's 4th largest city, that the Queen's official tour of the US came to an end. But what an end.
I want to meet my mother. I want to meet my mother. I want to meet my mother.
At Antioch Baptist Church, a service of Negro spirituals. For the head of the Church of England, it was certainly a change from Westminster Abbey. Her companion, the Mayor of Houston, clearly savouring the singing.
He would begin to break every one of our yokes. Oh, yes, he will.
The toes of Prince Philip and the Queen were tapping discreetly. Others were less restrained. It was a rousing climax to a 10-day tour that had sprung a few surprises, but held a lot to look back on.
There is a symbolism in the events of such a visit that defies analysis, but which has a way of reaching the hearts of people far and wide.